Okay, so hopefully the lighting's good. I know it's going to be like a shadow on this side, but, whatever. I don't have the lighting thing on. But been getting a lot of questions about moving to Tacoma or moving to the area. This time of year, that increases. If I don't answer your question, just give me a little bit of time. I will definitely get to it. I always try to reply to everyone's comment as much as I possibly can in the comment section below of any of the videos. I try to get back to those, but sometimes if I'm sick or if I get busy or what have you, it may take some time for me to actually get back to it. But definitely no, I will reply back. If you have a question about a particular neighborhood in Tacoma, go to our website, which is going to be down in the description box. It's just a basic website. It's not one that is HershNoeie.com or nothing like that. But it's just a basic website, a free one. And it has a link that shows each neighborhood in Tacoma. Now, I don't have one for other places. It talks about each neighborhood in Tacoma and kind of just the demographics of that area. And so that's kind of helpful. It also kind of tells you some of what it's known for, stuff like that. Now, that's not a lot of information, but it can kind of give you an idea as to what neighborhood is where and all of that type of stuff, right? So that can be very helpful. This time of year, people typically want to know more about Seattle or the area because obviously the weather's getting warmer. This is the time when people start to move. So, and I get it. Right now in Seattle, the price, and even here, the prices, as I did a video, the prices have been tumbling in Seattle in terms of everything. As far as houses and apartments go, but they're still pretty expensive. That's probably Noe. Yeah, that's probably Noe. Noe's home because she's kind of sick, but she's outside. Sorry. I might turn it off. Hold on. Okay, so now you just see it glow and you won't hear it. But anyway, so where was I? Yeah, the prices have went down quite a bit. And so that is a good thing, but they're still pretty pricey. Now, will things go up? I think that they will. I think that, the big tumble in Seattle is due to just a whole lot of speculation. Developers overbuild and people just feel like everything's red hot. And then people aren't ready to buy because the prices are so much. Then you have a cooling off period, which is what happened, and everything's starting to correct itself. And I think that you're going to start seeing prices stabilize in Seattle and start to go up. And then this summer, it's going to probably go back up again. I don't think nearly as fast as what it was or as expensive as it was, but I think it's going to go back up again. There's definitely more stock of apartments in Seattle, so the prices there are going to be probably better when you're looking at averages. When you look at Tacoma, it's going to be a little bit more, the prices are cheaper, but when you look at an average, I'm expecting a package, so I'm going to be looking out. When you're looking at average, it's going to be more of a higher price point here. And what I mean by that is that you're still going to get a much better deal here, right? It's just that rents are climbing faster here than they are in Seattle because we don't have the supply amount. Seattle has a glut of apartments right now, and trying to fill those is going to be challenging because there are other things that people have to take into mind and into consideration when they're talking about renting. And so I think Seattle has a lot of different things that it's really up against. Tacoma doesn't really have that issue. We don't have the whole parking issue as much as you will have in Seattle. And by that, I mean a lot of apartments charge you to park. So if you have a parking space, you got to pay for it. In Tacoma, that's not really the case for most properties, but that's starting to grow more and more and more as downtown is starting to develop. But a lot of those folks are not even putting in parking spaces, so people just have to kind of find parking and use public transportation. This video was actually going to talk about the e-bike service, Lime and Bird, but I want to talk a little bit about the whole housing and apartment thing because that is picking up steam now and people are very curious about it. Now, there are many neighborhoods outside of Seattle that could be a good option. However, you got to keep in mind that there's a crunch factor, okay? The key cities in this area outside of Seattle are going to be Bellevue, which is going to be to the east, Everett, which is going to be to the north, and Tacoma, which is going to be to the south. Okay? Now, to the west is just water. Well, I mean, there's islands and stuff like that, but, you know, there's no big population centers over there. Those are going to be kind of what you're dealing with. So when you go to some of these little smaller suburbs that are sandwiched in there, they're good options many times, but traffic is going to be a nightmare for you. I haven't really talked about traffic on here much, even though it's only, let me show you something. I'm kind of amped up because it's 2 o'clock, but I'm still drinking coffee. It's nice, fresh, and hot. So I'm going to be a little antsy. It's Friday, so hey, whatever. But anyway, so the neighborhoods in some of these little suburbs get very, very packed with traffic. And many of them have no interstate or highway systems or anything running through them. So a lot of times people will ask, well, what about this city? What about that city? I think you should look at the map and look at that city before you go any further, because that can be a problem. The traffic in King County, which is where Seattle is, where most of the cities that you know about are, is pretty bad. It's really, really bad. And so given that, you need to consider, okay, if I have a job that's over in Issaquah, and I'm going to have to rely on the highway or the interstate, why go to a city that has none of that? And I have to drive for a while on the local streets just to get to the interstate. So it gets old after a while. I mean, it gets to be basically a life issue. You're probably better off. Some of these people are going to get home faster living in Tacoma than they would some of these suburbs that are closer to Seattle, only because the city streets can be just as bad, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can try to go to another side street and meander through and zigzag and, you know, play a maze game, but with all of the crowded streets and all of the parking and all that, and you have like this little narrow area and you have to take turns from people going one direction and you're going the other direction, it takes longer than what it needs to. So really consider that, because that can be a bit of a concern. Some of the other things that people talk about are, outside of affordability and traffic and things like that, are crime. Now, crime is going to be kind of subjective because it depends. Some people, it depends on what it is, right? To me, I'm worried more about the stuff that's going to hurt me. You know, like slash and stab stuff. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned necessarily about, you know, oh, there's, you know, a prostitute down the street, or, oh, you know, that's not what it's not something that I'd like to see, but it's not something I'm that worried about. I'm more worried about, you know, crip walking and shoot 'em up type stuff. That's the type of crime that I'm concerned with. I don't like necessarily package thieves and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, but the other stuff is kind of heavy, and it's like, that's just not something that I want. So neighborhoods like that, of course, I'm going to avoid, and I think anyone should. But a lot of these cities around here, even this entire region, given everything, the crime here is not nearly on par with most of the country. When you go to big cities in other parts of the country, crime rate is just astronomical. Even in the suburbs, it's just bad. Here, it makes a lot of news because it's not so commonplace. Does that make sense? It's not super common like it is in other places. Like, you know, murder rates aren't in triple digits. It's just not. But in places like Indianapolis, where I live, that whole city has more murders in Indianapolis than the entire Puget Sound region combined. So that doesn't stop people from moving to Indianapolis, and it shouldn't stop people from moving, or the Indianapolis area, shouldn't stop people from moving here. So think about that in that type of perspective. It's a little bit different. There are some people who are worried about certain areas, but when you think about it, there are some cities who have more problems, just if you add up the numbers, than the entire 4 or 5 million people that live here. I mean, you can look it up. But anyhow, getting from that point, there were 2 companies that offered e-scooters and e-bikes here in Tacoma. Actually, Bird offered only the e-scooters, and Lime offered both e-scooters, which are pretty popular, and the electric bike. Now, Lime came in first, and I was behind one of those folks in the groups that were trying to push for Lime to come here. Right? Spoke to some of the people there. It was a really big, because I felt like it was important to have that in Tacoma. And I knew it would be well received, because when you look at downtown, which is where they focused most of their scooters, when you look at downtown, it is a very compacted downtown, but when you throw in all the hills and all of that, it can really give you a good workout. And if you're wanting to go from one end to the other, or if you want to go from past the light rail line runs actually in a good location. When you really look at the planning of the city and all of that, and how everything's kind of laid out just naturally, the way that they put it together, the light rail line where it runs is actually a good spot. But when you're trying to go like a few blocks over to some of the breweries or some of the businesses, it doesn't make a lot of sense to sit and wait for a bus to come and drop you off, and you're still not going to be directly at where you want to go. So things like a bicycle or a scooter makes perfect sense, because you can get off of that streetcar stop, go to a scooter, which will be probably close by, because they're all are close to the light rail system anyway. And then you can easily get to where you got to go to. Right? It makes everything a lot more seamless, especially in a downtown that doesn't really want a whole lot of cars anyway. Tacoma is really pushing against the whole bringing a lot of traffic. The reason for that is many reasons. One, Tacoma doesn't have a lot of big streets. Downtown, the streets are kind of small. So when you have Seattle-style traffic on Tacoma streets, it would just be hell. Nobody would want to deal with that, right? We don't have, big boulevards and, 3 and 4 lane roads going in one direction in downtown Tacoma. We just don't have that. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a lot of traffic down there, because you wouldn't be able to get anywhere. And the infrastructure is not in place to kind of circumvent that. So they want to try to do away with as many cars as possible and have people rely on public transportation or some sort of alternative form of transportation as opposed to a regular vehicle, personal vehicle. And I get that. A lot of people don't like it, but I get it. So you're not going to have a whole lot of parking structures being built anymore. You're not going to have a whole lot of parking spaces that companies have to provide when they build an apartment building, because the city is kind of not wanting more cars down there. I mean, there's a reason for that. So having scooters makes a lot of sense. But Lime came here first, and later Bird came here. And they did a trial run. Both of them, they did, I think, 90 days or something, or 60 days. I can't remember what they first did. So Lime did 2 extensions, Bird did an extension or so, and Bird had applied to become a permanent fixture for Tacoma. However, competition was strong enough to where they decided they can't compete. Lime is actually now the only game in town as far as electric scooters go. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be the only. Now, keep in mind, Lime got rid of their electric bikes because no one really was on them. And this area, I mean, downtown, there's a lot of college students, a lot of young people, a lot of, hipsters too. So the e-scooter thing makes a lot more sense. I mean, you saw the video of me getting on it. So it makes a lot more sense. So a lot of people, it became a lot more popular. So it didn't make sense for them to have the bikes, and so they got rid of the bikes. And then they focused only on the e-scooters, which have been extremely popular. Since they've been here for the short amount of time, they've had over 100,000 rides. Over 100,000 rides here on Lime on e-scooters alone. That is a tremendous amount of ridership. Now, that doesn't mean that Lime's going to be the only show in town for long. There could be others that could be trying to make their way in. But when you look at the 2 cities, Seattle and Tacoma, Seattle does not allow e-scooters. They only allow electric bikes. And in Seattle, you can only ride the bikes on designated bicycle lanes. Right? Or if it's in the road, you have to follow vehicle traffic. So given the tight spaces of Seattle and all the cars, if you're on a bicycle, you have to watch and pay attention, which you should anyway, but you have to really focus there. In Tacoma, it's different. Totally different world. They allow e-scooters. They haven't seen a huge amount of, people were saying, the opposition was saying, oh, there's going to be a lot of accidents, there's not enough data to show that that's the case. There have been some people that have been injured, but we're talking like less than 5 since the whole time that this has been going on. Maybe it's been 5. And so there's nothing that says that having scooters, electric scooters, is worse than having bicycles. So Tacoma is the only out of the two, the only one that allows electric scooters. So Lime is doing a bunch of business down here. And unlike Seattle, e-scooters can be put on the sidewalk. You can ride them on the sidewalk. There's nothing that says you can't do that. The other thing is, too, you don't have to be in dedicated bicycle lanes. You're supposed to wear a helmet, but it's not really enforced. So Tacoma has been very open with this and kind of saying, you know what, unless there's a problem, unless someone makes a stink about something or there's a big issue, it's kind of like a hands-off approach. And that, I think, is the reason why Lime is boosting itself more in this area. They're going to double the amount of scooters that they have. Now that Bird's out of the way, they're going to probably try to seal the deal and say, look, let's put a double the amount than what we have into Tacoma and make it so that we can expand further out. So I think it's a good thing. Some people may disagree, but it's not. There's a lot of folks saying that the bikes would end up in trash cans or in the sea or, on sidewalks. And there's been some of that. I was downtown and saw a guy putting Bird bikes in the trash cans downtown. I saw him. I tooted my horn and I called the police on him. Yep. Because there's no point in doing that. So, I wasn't going to get out and say something to the guy. I'm not going to do that. But I did definitely call the cops because that's just stupid. There have been times when bikes have been left on the sidewalk, and as a good citizen, and they've fallen over. As a good citizen, I set them up right and that type of thing. Why? Because of the simple fact it's just common courtesy. Maybe the wind blew it down. I don't know. But if someone who's in a wheelchair needs to get by, I don't want that to obstruct their pathway. Or someone's not paying attention, trip and fall and hurt themselves, right? And it doesn't look good because there's people who are also wanting to not have them here for whatever reason. So the more of those bikes that are just sitting around laying on the ground is more of a reason for them to take a picture and post it on some website saying, see, it's a total failure, even though that's only one bike or one e-scooter that's down on the ground. I know this is way off topic, but my whole point is I try to make sure that anytime I can make a difference, I can and try to. And I see this as being a good thing for the city, especially for people who are moving here and they don't have a whole lot of money. Keep in mind, some people are selling their cars when they move here. It's just a whole heck of a lot easier. For one, having a car, you have to pay the normal stuff like insurance and all that stuff. And if you have a payment, you have to pay that. But one of the big things here is you have to pay for the tags. Every place you do, but the tags are very expensive. Sound Transit, if you live in Snohomish, Pierce, or King County, so if you live in the Everett area, if you live in Seattle area or Tacoma area, and they're the other places that most people move to, you're going to have to end up paying a huge amount of money for your car. Even if it's old, especially if it's new, you're going to be paying a lot of money for your car tabs. That's a big issue here. So some people are saying, you know what, what's the point? If I live downtown, I really don't need a car. Especially if you live and work downtown, like maybe for funsies, but you don't really need a car. So a lot of people get rid of their car and they don't have any of that expense to really worry about, the upkeep and all that stuff and worrying about it and all of this. So having stuff like Lime is extremely important, especially when developers are building these big units, these big apartment buildings, and they have 5 spaces for 400 people, right? So anyhow, just wanted to give everybody an update on pretty much the development of the city, the prices that are basically going on in Seattle and Tacoma. I think that they're going to continue to go up in terms of rentals especially. And also the whole situation between Lime and Bird. Bird is gone. Lime is still here. We'll see who else comes into the mix. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.